This meeting with Rupert Murdoch.
It is 6 o'clock and I want to be mindful of everyone's time and leave plenty of time to get to everyone's questions. So for those of you who do not know me, I'm Anthony Wilson. I am the Belgrade Town Manager and have been for a year. You may not recognize me without a mask on, so you're more likely to see me like this these days. But this has been obviously an unusual first year for the new town manager. We've had in the last, oh golly, 6 months less interaction with the public than what I'm comfortable with, and I really enjoyed last year's meeting and meeting with a lot of you folks face to face. But as you may have read recently in Summertime in the Belgrades, I'm a hopelessly butter side up person, and so I just wanted to start this gathering just by focusing on a few of the things that I think are positives or silver linings that we here in Belgrade are currently facing. One of those obviously is just the landscape in which we live. You know, we're surrounded by lush forest and aqua blue lakes. My wife and I were out on the hiking trails yesterday. The weather's been terrific, and then we've got those starry nights. And so if you've got a social distance, I cannot imagine a better place to do that than Belgrade, Maine. And at the same time, our incidence of COVID is among the lowest in the nation. And that in and of itself is a blessing. Fortunately, most of our citizens are showing their concern for their neighbors by wearing their mask and by social distancing. Down in the village, our businesses, despite what's going on, seem to be thriving. If you haven't yet visited the new and improved Sunset Grill or the new and improved Days store. And then we also have the totally new Oliver and Friends bookstore and the Remedy Salon and Spa. So those are all great additions to our community. Now, unfortunately, with what's gone on, the new town manager missed his first traditional town meeting this year. But again, there's a silver lining. We had a record turnout in the July 14th election, in which voters overwhelmingly approved the town budget, and we were very grateful and thankful for that. And we've already received a couple of hundred requests for absentee ballots for the November 3rd election. So we are expecting that a great majority of our 2,700 registered voters will be casting ballots in that, and hopefully most of them will be doing that early because that'll probably represent the safest way to do that. Speaking of the budget, the town was able to hold the line on the tax rate at 15.3 mils this year, despite increases in the school and county budgets. So we were pretty proud about that. We're weathering the current storm nicely because of what I think is a very strong financial position for the town. And then lastly, we have, if you haven't visited it yet, and I got an email today from someone who has a new website at belgrade.com. I think it is a great way to learn about what's going on with the town, and it's very easy to navigate. And we've got a more engaged Facebook page. In fact, we're streaming this meeting right now on Facebook, and that makes it easier than ever, wherever you are in the world, to follow what's going on in Belgrade. So I would encourage you to follow our Facebook page and to subscribe to our website updates. They'll shoot you updates straight to your email. So that's my little short spiel. We have a couple of select board members. Actually, we have three, it looks like, select board members with us. We have Kathy Wall and Ernie Merkins and Dan Newman. So would any of you guys like to say a few words to our seasonal friends and residents?
No. No, I'm here to listen. I'm not here to talk.
Okay, all right. Well, then we'll get straight into it then. So the first person that I asked to be here and to speak tonight is the executive director of the Seven Lakes Alliance, Laura Roseday, because obviously the lakes play a great role in all different sorts of ways in our community. So Laura, why don't you unmute yourself and share?
Okay, well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. And am I coming through audio? Okay, great. So as Anthony just said, even though we are a conservation organization, we're a very community-based conservation organization. And that runs from having our building in downtown, which this year, because of COVID, is generally closed. But I want to invite any of you who want to follow up on anything that I say tonight to contact me directly, and we can have visits by appointment. We're really thankful that the conservation water quality related items on the ballot this year passed at 83%, which is we're very, very grateful for. COVID has not interrupted our programs this year to a great extent. Some of our programs ran at a little lower staffing, started later, ending a little bit earlier, but we were pleased that we were able to run a full milfoil crew. So one thing that Seven Lakes Alliance does is run the milfoil removal and prevention programs. And that you are probably aware that there's a major infestation in North Bay of Great Pond, and we've had a team out there since May, and they are just ending now, and there'll be additional removal still for about the next month, including through some professional contractors. They're putting down benthic barriers. If you see these burlap barriers, which is a new thing for us this year on the bottom, that is what they are. They're designed to get that infestation under control. And that's a hardworking crew out there, and we know a lot of folks say hi to them along the way there. For our courtesy boat inspections, we also had a full team this year. It's interesting to note that, as I'm sure you all have seen with your own eyes, that boat use is way up. We've inspected at all the boat launches more than 8,000 boats, and probably 6,000 on Great and Long Pond. So we're talking really significant numbers and a big risk if we don't keep that program strong. So thanks to everyone for their support for that. Our water quality program, we've continued to monitor on the lakes. You have a resident on Long Pond, Whitney and Jan King, because we couldn't go out and we couldn't have our usual interns because of COVID, and couldn't go out with volunteers, same reason. They were able to go out and basically complete all of the water quality testing that we needed to, so we didn't really create any gaps there this summer. The most significant water quality related happening this summer was that North Pond had a significant algae bloom. It is now over for the time being, but we expect that if things heat up again, that might come back. We're working with North Pond, and as you all likely know, the water from North Pond heads down to Great Pond. So we are working with North Pond Association on that, and among other things, we are still doing, even though the bloom is over, some limited but significant toxicity testing to make sure that there aren't substances in that bloom that go beyond the kind of nuisance level. And if you are interested in information on that, our water quality director, Dr. Danielle Wayne, has a blog that you can find on our website that is quite detailed about that, and she's been following along, working on that all summer. In erosion control, there are two things that I'd like to share with you. One is you may have had your property may have been part of the Great Pond Watershed Survey if you're near the shoreline, and I hope you've heard of it otherwise. It was done in the fall of 2018, and Seven Lakes Alliance is now taking on the follow-up to that survey. So a lot of folks will receive letters in the coming week that will indicate what the outcome of that was on their particular property if they were subject to the survey, and talk about what we can do to follow up with that to control erosion, because phosphorus in our lakes is what causes algae bloom. Erosion is the biggest source of phosphorus, really by far. So it's something that we can control. That's to Anthony's butter side up. When we have an impact that really truly is within our control, we view that as a good thing. And what we need to do is connect with people about that. There's an ongoing Great Pond watershed management plan process that's going on. The town of Belgrade is represented on that, as are many stakeholders. There'll be recommendations from that in October, and we'll be doing outreach on that process. So stay tuned. And last but not least, there is a Long Pond watershed survey that will take place on the 22nd and 23rd of September. On September 17th, there'll be a volunteer training from 2 to 4, and the BLA is coordinating that. So if you are interested in volunteering or participating in the training, because I think that there's a lot that you can learn about the water quality, even if you can't participate in the survey, that would be a great thing. So contact BLA about that, or you can contact me, and I will make sure that the information gets to them. Another thing that I want to mention is YCC and erosion control. Youth Conservation Corps had a smaller but energetic crew this summer. They did a lot of projects helping homeowners stop erosion from their land. So contact us if you have any questions about that. And the Lake Smart program, Seven Lakes Alliance, is also now taking on the coordinator role for Lake Smart evaluations on Great and Long Pond, as well as we're the regional coordinator. So if you have any questions as a homeowner, if you want to recommend someone to us to help stop erosion from their property, plant a beautiful pollinator garden. There are all kinds of great reasons to take care of your shoreline, not the least of which is your property value, including having a clear lake, because there's a very direct correlation about a 30% reduction from a lake that's clear with good water quality and one that has algal bloom problems. So that's a lot really quickly, but you know where to reach me at Seven Lakes, right on Main Street.
All right, thank you, Laura. Yeah, thank you, Laura. And if you want more information about the Long Pond survey, you can find that on the town's website at townofbelgrade.com/lakes. And we've got some questions for Laura. So we're going to move through some of our other speakers, and we will return to these questions that have been posed in the chat. So Lily Schubert is our recreation director, and she's a real trooper because she's actually tuning in from her vacation right now. So Lily, tell us what's going on in recreation, please.
So we just finished up our summer camp last week. We were allowed to have a limited elementary age program. We were allowed to have about 40 kids, but we averaged 20 a day. And we were able to have it successfully without any COVID symptoms or anything. So that was huge. We also had some yoga programs going on throughout the summer and our ping pong program. We weren't able to do as much because we didn't want to have anyone around our camp kids and risk anyone getting sick. We also had our artisan show on the Village Green for the first time this year. And that was a huge success, having it on a Sunday with the farmer's market. Brought in a lot of foot traffic, and our artisans were very, very proud of the event and have been begging me to do more this year. So I'm going to try and do one over Columbus weekend instead of doing Harvest Fest. So that's really all we've got going on right now.
Yeah, so, and we are also going to be offering the traditional after-school program starting on Monday, and it will have the same safety precautions that kept us COVID-free throughout the summertime. So Megan Obie is our library director. And so Megan, why don't you tell us what's going on at the library?
Sure thing. Can you hear me all right? All right, perfect. So hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to me talk today. While the circumstances surrounding coronavirus has certainly changed the way many of us are living our lives and the way we do things, the library has been working harder than ever to make our services available to everyone. While we might not have in-person programming, we do have online activities, including a weekly story time, weekly trivia, and a monthly book group. And recently, the library has sparked a community discussion with our new online program called Exploring Race in Relationships. Our hope is that we can help our community better understand the current social unrest concerning racial injustice. And regardless of where you stand or what you believe in, we want the library to be a place for deeper thinking, enlightening discussion, and as the town manager has said himself, a place for personal awakenings. So if you're interested, please feel free to reach out to me or someone at the library to reserve a spot in the program. Our next discussion will take place on September 10th, and we will be talking about the best-selling book, White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. But apart from programming and online activities, the library is now open for drop-in visits during our normal operating hours, Tuesday through Saturday. We only ask that guests wear a face mask, sanitize their hands frequently, and give plenty of space for others to access library services. The health and safety of our community is our #1 concern. The rest is a piece of cake. So if you need, some new books to keep yourself busy, or you need to use our computers and printers for any reason, or if you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to swing by the library.
One thing I do want to call attention to is the Library Board of Trustees now has a seasonal representative among its ranks. So
Yes.
typically our boards and committees are made up only of volunteers who are full-time residents, but the library trustees are the first one to have a seasonal resident. That is Catherine Tagmeyer, coming to us from the great state of Texas, I believe. So anyway, that's great. And also too, another reason to visit the library, Megan has free passes to all sorts of main attractions. So stop by there and pick some of those up. Our fire chief and our rescue chief, Dan McKenzie and Travis Burton, are also with us. So Dan, tell us what's going on with the fire department.
Well, as everybody knows, with the virus, it's been a long year, but one thing I wanted to point out is, it's going to be a little different if you do have to call for rescue coming to your house, and even for fire. We want to make sure we're going to ask some questions before we go right into somebody's home. So the biggest thing is to be truthful. We've had some instances where they're afraid, well, we were not going to help because, they've been in contact with someone with COVID or something like that, but that's not the case. We might take extra precautions and go out and put on gowns and stuff like that. So it's going to take more time. So everybody just needs to be patient in that aspect of it. We have a new truck that's been ordered for a while, but with the virus, the chassis has been delayed. That's going to be in the depot station, a new tank truck. We're hoping this fall, but they still haven't given me an exact timeline. But hopefully we'll hear something soon about that. The other thing is the town of Belgrade and the town of Rome approved hiring and joining together another position. So we have that out for advertisement right now for the new employee. The town of Rome's going to be paying half and Belgrade's the other half. The employee will be a town of Belgrade employee stationed in Belgrade, and the hope is to be covered. Well, the plan is to be covered for for a full 7 days during the day, from like approximately 8 to 5 o'clock. And then the rest will be covered by the volunteers. And the big reason for this is the big drop in volunteers. It's getting less and less people getting involved. So it's kind of I think you're going to see, you see it in a lot of other towns already, that they're starting to hire full-time people just to cover some of these calls. The town of Belgrade just voted on the select board last night, or this night before, about the agreement with Rome. Now it has to go to Rome for the mutual aid agreement part to be covering for them. So hopefully Monday night they'll approve that, and hopefully we'll get some applications and get that moving forward. I would think probably mid-September would be a goal to get somebody on board, but it might be a little bit later than that, depending on how everything goes. Lastly, we're still planning to build a new fire station in the depot area. That's our outright goal. We're still looking for land. So if anybody knows any land in that area, we kind of have to be pretty close to where we are now, just for the reason of insurance reasons. Because anybody within over 5 miles from the fire station, their insurance is really going to go up. So moving it around, our goal is to be right pretty close to that depot station now, within a few miles. I mean, it's probably going to be in a 3 to 5 year plan, but we're saving money every year. We have a capital reserve, and we hope to find some sort of land and then move forward before we, put the whole building to the town vote. The other thing we're working on, we've been in contact with we're trying to get our insurance rating down. So we're making those phone calls. If we can get that down, it will help people, definitely within 5 miles. Over 5 miles, it still won't help much, but people within 5 miles, if we can get the ISO rating down, that's going to help on your insurance rate. So we're working on that too. And I think that's about it.
So Dan, we do have a question here via the chat, and Travis, you may want to weigh in on this. The question is, do you guys have enough PPE for the staff and for the volunteers, and do you need access to more?
At this point, we do, yes. We got low there for a while, but we've got some more back in. So at this point, we're all set.
And I don't think we're breaking any confidences to say we did have a few incidents of COVID early in the pandemic, but haven't seen anything recently.
And that's the thing. And we're going to ask a lot of questions before we go barging into somebody's home. Because that's why we want you to be truthful. If you've been in contact with somebody, or it's not like we're not going to turn around and walk away. We're still we might walk out to the truck and put, gowns on and stuff like that, but we're going to come back. But we're just going to ask those questions and be truthful to make sure what type of gear we need to, put on.
Travis, is there anything you want to add?
I think Dan's pretty much covered it. He's covered a lot of the bases. We're trying to, there's a whole protocol, so hopefully no one has to call 911, but when you do, they're going to ask a lot of questions. They're just trying to cover their bases, because when we get dispatched, they tell us a code, and that gives us an idea if we need to suspect COVID and take the precautions for that. They're also, on a lot of these calls, they're having the patients meet us outside. So if that's something that's possible, depending on the situation, we do that. But Dan's touched base with pretty much everything. Knock on wood, we haven't seen it for a long time, so hopefully we keep trending that way. But we'll see what happens with the fall.
Right. So being a newcomer to the community, I feel very fortunate to have these two guys leading our fire department, because I think they're just both outstanding men and public servants and firefighters. And so Belgrade is very lucky indeed. There was also a question previously about the library about if someone handles a book, do we take it out of circulation for a time? And we do. Once a book has been returned, it's set aside for 4 days, just so that if there's any virus on it, that virus dies before it's put back into circulation. So next, I'd like to hear from Kenny Skino. Kenny is the director at our transfer station, which is perhaps the one facility in town that everybody uses.
How we doing? Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. All right. For those of you who frequent the transfer station, you've noticed over the summer a lot of changes, all due to the virus. We're dealing with it just like everybody else is. Had to make do a lot of rearranging for social distancing, which caused quite a bit of a backup at the recycle center for quite some time over the summer. We've recently reopened that a little bit more. So that to ease up on the backups. Yeah, I guess that's about it there. Hopefully by next year we'll be back to normal again and not have to social distance, and we'll have traffic flowing through. Coming up in September 12th, we're going to be hosting our very first paper shred event at the transfer station. From 9 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. So if anybody has documents that they would like to have shredded, you can bring it during those hours. We also new this year, we started collecting donations for the Kennebec Valley Humane Society. So if you do have any unwanted pet products, we take towels, blankets, sheets, any type of pet products that you may have laying around. will take those and they'll go right to the Kennebec Valley Humane Society. October 10th this year, we're having our household hazardous waste collection, which is in Winslow. I know that most summer residents are not here October 10th, but we are working with KV Cog to have a summer event for household hazardous waste items that you may have laying around. There is another local town, Reedfield, that did it this summer, and I believe next summer they're inviting us to join them. We have next year, hopefully, when you come back, you'll see some infrastructure changes. We're looking at repaving a good portion of the transfer station by the recycle center that is currently in disrepair, falling apart. So hopefully that'll be done before next summer. Other than that, I mean, our recycling, we're just starting to pick up again. And luckily for us, the market is starting to pick up. So we are starting to get some more money for our recyclables, which is always a good thing. That's about it that's going on right now. Unless I left something out, and I'm sure Anthony will remind me.
Well, two things come to mind. One is that on Tuesday, it's going to be our final Tuesday of offering hours just for recycling in order to sort of spread out the traffic flow throughout the week. We have been accepting recyclables on Tuesdays, but this Tuesday from 1 to 7, that'll be the final Tuesday that we do that. And then another service that Kenny started offering this summer, which has been a great and popular service, is taking in tattered American flags. And so we then hand those over to a military organization that then disposes of them in a respectful manner. So if you have flags that need to be disposed of and want that done in a respectful manner, then bring them to the transfer station and hand them to one of the attendants.
Thank you. I forgot about that.
All right. So I think Chris Dutil, our cemetery sexton, is with us. Chris, are you there?
He was.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Why don't you tell us what's going on with the cemetery?
So far with the cemetery, Plan 5 is still in the works and it's going as planned. The voters did approve the increase of the cemetery plots and the burial rate, so that's increased. So if people want to look at the town website, they can find out more there. And this year I've had a few complaints called about the burial plots being vandalized. So if you see anything out of the ordinary, just let me know and I can address it when it happens. Pretty much maintenance wise, it's still going good. I started painting some of the fire stations today, so hopefully that will continue with good weather. Other than that, everything's going good.
All right. Well, Chris and his crew work very, very hard to keep our grounds and our buildings looking good. Two things I want to mention about the cemetery. One, and this is largely due to Chris, is we have potable water out there. So last year, some of the supply was kind of salty and people had to bring their own water, but we've tapped into a fresh supply. And so you can get potable water throughout the cemetery for watering your grave. And then also, because of one of the benefits of having an increase in the fees for services out there is we have greater availability for weekend services this year. And so we're able to more easily accommodate families as a result of that. All right, Mary Vogel, our town clerk. Let me switch back to the screen. Oh, there she is. So Mary, if you'll unmute and share with us what you have.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, all right, good. So I recognize a lot of the faces out there, and I'm Mary Vogel, the town clerk. I became town clerk in June, and so the position is new to me. While I'm not new to Belgrade, I did work previously here. And like I said, I recognize a lot of the faces out there. I just wanted to mention we've had a lot of changes here in the town office. We've had a new employee come in. She came with a multitude of experience. We have Charlene Houle, who is still employed here, and many of you may know. Charlene's been here for years and years. Poor Charlene. Anyway, she's also our new town registrar, so she does all the registrations for voter registration. It's been an unprecedented year. A lot of things have happened here in the town office, and COVID-19 has, I think, changed all of our lives and how we do business here in the town office. We really want to thank all those non-residents as well as residents for your compliance with those COVID-19, wearing the mask and everything. But just wanted to update you to let you know that a lot of the items that you may need to do, and if you don't feel comfortable coming into the office, can be done over the telephone. We're willing to work with everyone over the telephone, and you can also do some of those registrations, ATVs, boats, vehicle registrations can also be done online. If you go to our Town of Belgrade website, our website is very good. We have a new website that is very user-friendly. Another way to get information from the town is with the Facebook, and our town manager has been doing an excellent job there and keeping everyone updated. Not sure what else I have to mention. I think that, you know, if you're looking for information in the town, you can call the office and we're willing to help you.
It was a major coup when we managed to hire Mary Vogel as our town clerk. So I was super thrilled by that. And Mary's right. So again, one of the silver linings of this is a lot of people discovered that they can very easily re-register their vehicles, their boats, their ATVs, their snowmobiles online. And so the number of online registrations increased dramatically. And again, if you'll go to our website, there's a button on the homepage to get to our online services. So last but not least is our treasurer and tax collector, Nick Poole, who's had a meteoric rise in our organization.
Yeah, my name is Nick Poole. I became the treasurer this past April, and I've been the tax collector for the past 2 years for the town. It's been relatively quiet for my position. It's about to pick up though. In terms of tax payments, those have been rolling in very steady. And just a reminder, the due date for the taxes is September 4th. Interest will start accruing September 5th at 2.79% annually. And I think we've kind of covered it already, but the taxes can be paid online, over the phone, obviously in person and by the mail. And if taxes aren't paid by December 31st, they will end up in the annual report. So please get those paid as soon as you can and spread the word. As far as my treasury work, that's also been quiet, but that's about to change with the audit process starting in November. And hang on, my camera messed up. Starting in November, and the budget process actually starting next week with packets going out to all the heads and stuff. So yeah, that's about it.
All right. So like you said, taxes due a week from tomorrow, and it's pretty amazing to watch that money roll in. Our revenue stream is straight up and then straight down. It all happens in the course of less than a month. Our road commissioner was not able to join us this evening, but I did want to mention that we have a new road commissioner after many decades of service. Morris Childs decided he no longer wanted or could do that job. And so in July, Jason Stevens was elected to that position. And Jason has really hit the ground running. His aim is to maintain all the local roads before the first freeze. So I think he's finished with the West Road completely and was working on the Guptill Road last week. And so he's really trying to do that. And fortunately, we've given him the resources to do that. One of the things we did in the budget was we increased our road maintenance budget by $20,000 as a way to try to preserve the investment that has been made through our paving project over the last few years. And I think that's going to pay real dividends. Next year, when Jason's term ends, that position will no longer be an elected position. It'll be an appointed position. That's something that the voters decided. And then some of you may be interested, the next paving project will be addressing some of the little side roads there in the village, which could really use some TLC. Our CEO is also working this evening, so he was unable to join us, but I do want to say from a planning board perspective, those guys are looking at doing a major rewrite, and they're very deep into that now, of our subdivision ordinance. And on the November 3rd ballot, we will have a moratorium ordinance to place a moratorium for 180 days on permit applications that relate to wind farms, solar farms, cell towers, and subdivisions. And that's just to give us a chance to get those ordinances in shape to address those developments. And then those ordinances, those amended ordinances, will be placed before the electorate at the next annual town meeting, which hopefully will occur in March. So with that, I wanted to open it up to you guys for any questions that you may have. There have been some that have been placed in the chat, but if someone wants to speak up, I'd like to hear this. And it's not just for questions also, it's also for you to share any thoughts or concerns or input that you have about our community and the way that it's governed. So anyone? All right, well, I tell you what, I'm gonna, yes.
Anthony, sorry, this is Laura. Would you like, I noticed that there were a couple of questions directed to their water quality type questions. Do you want us to answer those at this point?
Sure, and that'll be a good segue. I was gonna stir the pot here a little bit by asking if anyone here has any thoughts on houseboats on our lakes. So, so go ahead, Laura, why don't you answer some of those questions, and maybe that'll spark some further discussion.
Sure. One of the questions had to do with the number of boats inspected, and the number 6,000 was Great and Long combined. Long Pond had an especially big increase this year. So that wasn't just Great Pond. If I said that, I misspoke. It's both. And the season is not over yet. One of the challenges that we have is that, as you all well know, the season really starts prior to Memorial Day and ends far later than Labor Day. But the state defines the CBI season, and the CBI program is grounded in a state program. You know, we miss a lot of boats. So last year we started trying to count before and after the season, and we did that somewhat this year as well, although before the season was difficult because of COVID. Now, you know, that we know how to keep our distance and wear our masks and all these things, and all of our crews do that, incidentally, no matter what program they're operating out of. We will be trying to capture the number of boats after Labor Day as well. And there were some questions about alum and alum treatment. So for those of you who aren't aware, one remediation strategy to deal with a problem of recurring algal blooms, as had been happening on East Pond for a couple of decades, is to use a treatment called an alum treatment. Alum is aluminum, and the aluminum essentially strips the phosphorus out of the water and kind of locks it onto the bottom. And the question was, is that still under consideration for other lakes? The answer is yes. All potential approaches are still under consideration. The question of whether or not an alum treatment is necessary, whether it's time for it, whether it's the right solution, is a complicated one. That's why we have scientists who work on this question. On Great Pond, there is the Great Pond Watershed Management Planning process that I mentioned. The scientists on that committee are looking at all of the various inputs of phosphorus. That includes septic, air, erosion, waterfowl, anything that might put phosphorus in the water. And so if you're wondering, waterfowl is probably 2% or less. Erosion is likely around 40%. So again, it's an amount that we can control. And what that means is that we ought to be able to take really significant steps to keep the lake from having an algae bloom if we can control the inputs of erosion. And that is much cheaper and much more controllable. So that's why we're awaiting the Science Committee's recommendation in October.
So one of our select board members, Kathy, you want to say something?
I just want to say, Laura, doesn't the alum treatments require state approval before they can be applied?
They do. And one of the things that the Great Pond group is looking at is basically making sure that all of the information that needs to be gathered is gathered. So you can't just do an alum treatment. And thank you for the question, Kathy. The state of Maine has to permit the alum treatment because they're literally putting, quite a tremendous amount of chemical mixture straight into the lake. The good news about alum treatments is that they work in the aluminum, the chemistry is the chemistry, and you strip the phosphorus out. The huge question is, how long does that last? And is it the right answer for a particular lake, given what the sources of phosphorus are, where they are, how they're moving, all of these things. So we're monitoring East Pond. So we applied an alum treatment in East Pond in 2018 in 2 applications, one in June and one in October. So we're coming up this October on, full treatment phase for the full two years, 3 summers, or, just about that. So we have been taking, and East Pond Association volunteers have been taking quite a lot of clarity readings all summer long, and also we're taking phosphorus readings. And the good news is that looks pretty good so far. East Pond is kind of shaped like a bowl. So basically the historic load of phosphorus is kind of sitting in the bottom of that. And it was determined that after 20 years and about $2 million worth of work to assess and try to remediate East Pond, that there was no other alternative than to do an alum treatment. And now the question will be, how long will it last for? And as I say, the readings look pretty good, but there were some readings this summer that were a little higher in phosphorus and lower in clarity than we may have expected. So, we're just keeping an eye on it, and we'll continue to do so.
So while we're on the subject of, lakes, let's talk a little bit about houseboats, because one of our select board members
Before
here.
you go there, Anthony, I'm going to say something else.
Okay.
That is, see, you asked me before if I wanted to say something. Now I do.
I distinctly remember you saying no.
But I changed my mind. So anyway, I just want to say thanks to the Seven Lakes Alliance, the Belgrade Lakes Association, and all of the monitoring and all the work that they do in order to keep the lake safe. Because as everyone knows, and if they don't know, they ought to be apprised of the fact that these are the major income producer for the entire watershed. They take care of well over 50 to 60% of our local taxes. And they, you know, all the businesses in the area that I'm aware of, in one way or another, make money from the lakes, whether it's restaurants or grocery stores or carpenters or people that are building houses and repairing houses. I mean, I think that it's really, really important that we recognize that for what it is in terms of the financial boon that we get from two nonprofits that are actually, we give them some support. The state, you know, the state gives them some support, and the local government gives them some support. But the majority of their income comes from private donations and from private people. And yet they benefit the public in the most amazing way. So I need to say that publicly, and thank you and the Belgrade Lakes Association and all the work that you guys do in order to keep things safe and keep the money rolling in. So
Right.
there.
So we have.
Now
we have
I'm done.
Okay, very good. So we have a
Thank you.
question from Alan just about whom to contact to evaluate land erosion. And Alan, you can do that by contacting the Seven Lakes Alliance. They have the, of course, the Lake Smart program, and they'll come out and do an audit of your property to see if it's contributing to the problem. So, so this raises, all of this raises an interesting discussion. One of our select board members here tonight, Dan Newman, really suggested that we raise the topic of houseboats on our lakes with you guys, because most of you have camps, and so you have a stake in what happens with the lakes. And so you may know that the town has a moorings committee that has been wrestling with this for about a year now, trying to come up with some recommendations to the select board that could be codified to ensure that the character of our lakes isn't changed in any negative way by a proliferation of houseboats. And someone on here asked, how do you define a houseboat? And that's part of the question that we're wrestling with. You know, in some ordinances that I've read, a liveaboard boat is defined as a vessel with a head, a galley, and sleeping quarters. Of course, you know, you could sleep on most any sort of boat. And so anyway, so I think particularly the board members here tonight, and myself included, would like to hear what thoughts you guys might have about whether this is a concern, and if so, in what sort of way you think that the town should address it.
Anthony, this is Steve Smith. Could I comment?
Absolutely, Steve.
It is a major concern. It's something that's been discussed at the BLA meetings. It's not only a privacy concern. People don't want houseboats parked off their shoreline, but it's a water quality concern. And we clearly don't want sewage or trash going into the lakes. I've noticed, I live on Sahagan Road, and I've noticed in the last several years on nice weekend days, the number of trucks with trailers that are parked on Sahagan Road as opposed to on the boat launch area has gone up dramatically. So I think usage largely by non-waterfront people, including local neighbors of ours, Waterville, Augusta, et cetera. And I think it probably, absent town action, we are going to begin to see people bringing boats that they stay over, and it is a major concern.
So, Steve, I'm curious, do you happen to have any ideas about, well, let's say if you were the king of Belgrade, how would you address this issue?
If I were the king of Belgrade, I would not permit houseboat type boats on which people stay overnight on either Great Pond or Long Pond.
Yeah. So Jones chat in the chat here says, to me, a houseboat is where someone lives all the time, like they have on Lake Lanier in Cummings, Georgia. It's like an apartment. And so one of the concerns, Joan, about a live aboard boat is human waste is produced on that. And so how is that waste disposed of? Obviously, we don't want that dumped into the lake. So as Steve mentioned, that's an environmental concern. And I think we also want to be respectful of the investment that so many of these folks have made in their lakefront properties and in their camps. And, you know, it would be very easy for someone, for instance, instead of renting out their camp on a spare weekend, just to put some houseboats on the lake and rent those out on Airbnb, and they don't have nearly the investment in our community or the commitment to the lake that some of our camp owners would have. So I think those are some of the issues that we're wrestling with. But anyone else have thoughts that they would care to share? Okay, let me go back. There were a couple of questions here. Here's one for you, Travis. And I know you addressed in the chat, but for those who may not have seen it, talk a little bit about how the opioid epidemic has affected Belgrade, if at all.
Once in a while, we see some calls associated with that. We have seen some overdoses, but not to the extent of other towns. And we haven't, you know, it's not a super frequent thing, but knock on wood, it hasn't hit us too hard. And hopefully it doesn't.
All right. So I see that Pam and Mark, who I haven't seen in a really long time, I miss you guys. So you've raised your hand. Talk to us.
Okay, thanks. Hey, everyone. It's really good to see so many faces. And thanks to the town for the amazing work that you do. I feel like the town of Belgrade is getting better and better. So that's great. Many of you know us already. We're the owners and operators of Camp Renoya on Great Pond. And this summer we were able to open camp with a small group like Lily and the town in our own bubble. And we were successful in not having any outbreak of COVID. And in fact, the CDC has received a report from Maine as a kind of a scientific paper written by 4 of the doctors from Maine camps that successfully ran and operated camps. So that was pretty exciting. It was a lot of hard work, and we're glad we did it. So the reason that I'm bringing all of that up is that Camp Renoya has been a real safe haven for a lot of people. This is our 114th season. And it reminds me of the Belgrade Lakes Association motto, which is to protect and preserve the Belgrade Lakes. And that's expanded to the Seven Lakes Alliance, which I appreciate all the work that people are doing there. But I think a lot of people who come to this area, including many of our alumni who have bought property in the Belgrades and helped to support the greater community in all the things that Kathy Wall mentioned, is because they love Belgrade Lakes the way Belgrade Lakes is. And I'm not saying we need to freeze time, and I appreciate and respect that people want the opportunity to have their businesses thrive, but I feel like the idea of moorings being able to be placed anywhere on any of the lakes without any kind of management of those would be a disaster for the Belgrades. I think it would create hardship on a lot of businesses. I think properties would be devalued. I think the concept of the beauty of the Belgrade Lakes would be diminished significantly. And you'd see a lot of people leaving the area over time. I'm talking 10, 20, 30 years to go to other areas where it's more pristine. So I think the concept that some of us have is to try to maintain the beauty of the lakes, and that would include being restrictive in some ways about how many moorings people can have and whether houseboats can be put out on the lake in any random place. And so I would hope that we as a town can find a balance. That's a long way of saying, you know, I hope that the ordinance is really looked at and supported in a way that helps all of us to maintain and protect the beauty of the Belgrades.
Obviously, Pam, we all have an interest in that, is protecting this little paradise that we have going on here. So I'm going to read just a couple of messages in the chat. My friend Mike Everly, who owns a camp near Long Pond and lives in Georgia full time, says, I agree with Steve. Sounds like a terrible idea to allow houseboats or even overnight stays on the water. Joan says we need to make sure that all properties on the lake have new septic systems. Ted asked, can't the town put a restriction on no houseboats? Just keep it as broad as possible. So one of the models that we had, that the Moorings Committee has looked at, is an ordinance in the town of Wilton on Wilson Lake that says that all live aboard boats, defined as those with a head, a galley, and sleeping quarters, must dock overnight at a marina with pump out capabilities. Now the catch is there is no marina on Wilson Lake, much less one with pump out capabilities. And so, ergo, they have, in essence, prohibited houseboats on their lakes. Joan asked, what about sailboats that have a galley? And that's why we typically aren't using the term houseboats in favor of live aboard boats, because, we're trying to consider the impact that just having a boat that doesn't have a head, doesn't have sleeping quarters, might have on our lakes. Paul says, I think a general prohibition is called for until there is a comprehensive plan to minimize any pollution risk. Let's see. Joan says, are we having lots of overnight people on boats on Great Pond? Joan, I don't think that we have a problem right now. This is more of a preventative measure to ensure that we don't have a problem. We just received a message from one of our mooring committee members yesterday who took some pictures. He lives on Messalonsky, and there was a houseboat on Messalonsky that had been moored for 3 nights in a row at a camp that was down the shore from him. So, and we've seen this issue more recently in Rangeley, where someone has, again, bought some houseboats, and we're going to monetize that by having them be Airbnbs on the lake in Rangeley. Anybody else have any thoughts that they want to share? Ernie.
Yeah, I wanted to just point out to people that, for some that maybe don't know about how ordinances are sort of created and applied, there are some that I'm aware that kind of are allergic to any sort of ordinance or law made, because we can get bogged down with too many laws. I know the idea behind this committee looking into this is to head off a problem in the future where an enforcement needs to take place due to somebody who is flagrantly mooring in a place that is unwanted, or is potentially camping out for weeks at a time somewhere. So this does happen in southern Maine and lakes elsewhere in the country, where so potentially an ordinance needs to be floated to see if it needs to be put into place so that we have a way to enforce a problem should it come up. I know we ran into this one time with a parking situation, and when we wanted to potentially enforce a parking situation, we found we didn't have an ordinance. The same thing was true of posted roads, where we didn't actually have an ordinance where we could enforce a violation. So, ordinances are in place for posted roads now. We may someday have an ordinance in place for parking that we can enforce when a flagrant violation happens. So, the function of this group isn't necessarily to ban houseboats per se, but initially the moorings committee was set in place to sort of come up with the recommendations for a potential ordinance that would keep boats that overnight stay boats from mooring in places, and thus discourage them from doing so. Down the line, certainly, having a regulation against ordinance against overnight boats could be necessary, but the same could be true of jet skis. We've had some complaints on the lake of jet skis, buzzing all over the place, and I know some lakes have banned them too. So I mean, at some point we have to determine what is our role in banning boats on the lake, and when it comes to the safety of the water or the waterways or the lake water quality, then obviously we've got to do something. So more or less, this is something to be considered. So down the line, we're not caught with our quote unquote with our pants down, not having a way to enforce something when it needs to be enforced. It's awful hard to close the barn door after the horse has left. So that's sort of the idea behind it. I just thought I'd pass that out in case people wanted to know more about it. We're not looking to just willy-nilly create new ordinances for no reason, and they do need to be debated. And when the time comes that an ordinance, the select board, say for instance, is satisfied that this a potential ordinance can go before the voters, there will be people that will be against them. There will be people that will be for it, and it'll be up to the voters to decide if it goes into place. And we'll see how that goes in the future.
Yeah. So Ernie raises a good point there at the end that you guys probably all know this, but just in case, all ordinances must be approved by the electorate. So eventually the voters will have the final say on this. So Joan notes that if we enact anything, we would need an enforcement plan, and she's absolutely correct. And under the state law, if we have a moorings ordinance, we would have to name a harbor master. That harbor master could be the code enforcement officer. And our thought at this point is we would investigate concerns or complaints about the violations of the moorings ordinance, like we do all of our other codes with the code enforcement officer. So,
Hey, Anthony, I think back a while ago, Mike was waving at you. It's either that or he's trying to get the sun out of his eyes.
Little of each, actually.
Oh, okay.
I do have something to say, a couple things. Title 30 gives the town the right to appoint harbor master as long as we have the right ordinances. Doesn't say we have to appoint one. Several times I've heard Anthony and others refer to the jurisdiction being 200 feet from the shore. That 200-foot area is, the state considers that a safety zone. It's supposed to be headway speed only in there. That is inconsistent. The fact that town only has jurisdiction there is inconsistent with the idea of a harbor master would have jurisdiction all over the lake. So I don't know that you're correct, Anthony, in saying that we only have jurisdiction 200 feet out. I think.
Well, if I'm incorrect, an MMA lawyer, bad advice.
Say again.
I said if I'm wrong, and a Maine Municipal Association attorney gave me some bad counsel.
That wouldn't be the first time necessarily, but I think it's worth, if we're going to get into this, it'd be worth checking, because how are you going to have a harbor master just take in 200 feet from the shore? His or her going back and forth in that area is going to be as bad as having, some of the other things that happen in that safety zone now. That safety zone is generally ignored, and I don't know whether it's because people don't know or don't care about it. But you can sit out here at my camp and you can see them all the time going by within 200 feet. I don't say much about it because they don't really do any damage to me, but they do to some camps.
Anybody else have thoughts that they'd like to share? I'll just read a few more of these notes for the folks who haven't seen them. Again, Pam and Mark say, we know some houseboats are rented like camps on Airbnb and other rental sites, and that's discouraging. Joan asked if it's possible to limit the number of docks or boat buoys each property can have. I don't know about that. Currently, we have no authority to limit the number of docks that someone has. And then I thought state law about waterways is that anyone can have their boat anywhere offshore. So I did check with the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife recently, and there is a prohibition regarding anchoring or mooring your boat anywhere beyond 200 feet from shore. So that's the state regulation.
May I say something?
Absolutely.
I noticed that, thank you. I noticed that Joan King made a remark about summer property owners not getting the right to vote. And yes, that is true, but there's nothing that stops them from lobbying the voters in town and educating the voters in town about what their concerns are. And to just feel that they have no power and they have no voice simply because they don't have a vote is probably a little bit on the erroneous side. I think that they have a little bit more opportunity to talk to people than they originally thought.
And too, Kathy, you know, forums like this is a perfect opportunity to help shape the public policy. And so this thing is still totally up in the air. And so, you know, we're looking for all the input that we can possibly get to find the right fix for Belgrade. And you guys, even though you may not be able to vote on the final ordinance, you can be a part of helping to shape what the ordinance is.
You absolutely can. You absolutely can. So, I mean, that's just my observation on the challenges that summer residents sometimes have.
Right. Any other thoughts from anyone?
Yeah, I think to echo what Kathy said, I think despite the fact that non-residents can't vote, they can still have influence. They can talk, they can work with people like Laura Rose Day and her group. They can talk to the select board. Select board's very responsive, and they have done a lot of things that were first questioned or brought up by non-residents. And I think they should still keep that in mind if you have a problem. Talk to the select board, talk to the lake groups and other people who might have an interest.
And I realize that summer residents come up here to have fun, but you know, sometimes government's fun too, you know?
Yeah, well, and
Anthony,
yes, Laura.
go ahead. Well, I was just going to add that this summer, we've really seen a number of people who are summer residents or are here as even, you know, kind of short-term renters. They come for a couple weeks each summer and have been doing so for a long time, who really make tremendous contributions by working with us on things and making observations and particularly sharing, you know, back to Pam's point about people cherishing the fact that the lakes area as much as it used to be. We had a renter call us and let us know that they had that their boat hadn't been inspected, and they were concerned about that and knew what a risk that was to the lakes. And I think it's a great point that summer residents are, you know, really incredibly important. And I just want to second the motion that we would love to work with anyone who has thoughts about how we can conserve not just water. I mean, I limited my remarks earlier to water quality, but you know, we also have an extensive land trust, and one of in fact, the top priority for the lands we protect is protection of water quality. And a lot of times when we do that, the ideas and easements and things like that come from people who are summer residents. So they're tremendous contributions beyond the vote.
And so, yes, Kathy.
Here we go again.
Uh-oh, Kathy froze up. Okay, well, oh, there you're back. You're back.
Since the turn of the century, And before that, Belgrade has existed as a resort community. You know, the days when the trains used to come up here and bring people and they would stay here for the entire summer, or they would stay for a month at a time. I think that the farm that Alex and I currently live on was an orchard at one time and handled a lot of their sales of apples directly to the old Belgrade Inn and the hotel and the various other organizations that used and sold apples. So, I mean, that's just a small example, but we have to remember that Belgrade for many, many, many years has depended upon its visitors for the vast majority of its income.
I want to raise one last question because in the chat and on our Facebook page, she's very persistent. Karen McFadden raised a concern about Belgrade Stream, and I think we can agree it's a valid concern. And Laura, maybe you're the best person to address this, but she's wondering just why there's not more of a focus for addressing the milfoil issue in Belgrade Stream.
It's a great question. Not the first time that we've had this back and forth. I couldn't agree more that I wish that there was something that could be done on Belgrade Stream, and Seven Lakes Alliance, me with our milfoil program manager, had an extensive discussion with Department of Environmental Protection in the spring about this exact issue. I think everyone's at a bit of a loss as to how to address so much milfoil. There are, you know, it would be incredibly expensive and labor intensive, and I'm not even sure it would be possible to deal with the infestation by hand the way we do a significantly smaller, but still, you know, obviously challenging infestation in Great Pond. I'd love to have another discussion with you offline. I can share some more details with you about that. Friends of Messalonsky actually has kind of organizational, use the term jurisdiction for lack of a better term, they run the CBI program and do the milfoil management largely in Messalonsky in the lake and also in Belgrade Stream. And we're continuing to develop a partnership with them. Seven Lakes has removed milfoil at the top of Belgrade Stream. A couple of weeks worth of work every summer because there aren't any infestations in Long Pond. And so we try to, keep the infestations where they are. That's the same thing we do in Great Pond. But it's a very tough issue, with the question being that no one knows exactly what would work. So Karen, I'd be happy to talk to you again about this.
Okay, Laura, I'm from Indiana, and can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Thank you for your input. But they use chemicals in Indiana, and it shocked all the lily pads. It shocked all the other growth, but everything came back except for the milfoil. And I know it would be expensive. I know we don't want chemicals, but it's like the stream has just, my property value probably has dropped so much because it's been there for 20 some years. It wasn't taken care of. And now we've got these algae blooms, which has nobody mentioned. Nobody even, this one lady wants to know where's Belgrade Stream. I mean, it's so sad that it's just ignored. It's a beautiful place. I like it because it's quiet. That's why I didn't go on the lake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was not aware that there was an active algal bloom on.
Oh my gosh, it's terrible. It's disgusting.
Yes, I'd like to talk with you about that too. Yeah, well, there is a, so on Cobussy watershed, not only does Cobussy have, well, they used to have one invasive plant and now they have 3 or maybe 4. So we'd like to, keep that from spreading here. But this year, because of the difficulty they're having, the DEP approved an herbicide treatment that is a little broader, has a broad application. Usually herbicides are used only where, again, there's no other alternative. And I hear what you're saying, and I'm saying it too. There might not be another alternative, but herbicides have their own issues.
And I
So-
understand that. I do
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, I know you do. Yeah.
We've talked before. I'm going to be bitching about the stream forever. That's just, this stream's got my heart, but it's getting frustrating.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place, and let's talk offline. I'd like to do that.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And in the same fashion, we've been here for an hour and 15 minutes now. And so I just want you guys to know two things. One is even though you don't have the opportunity to vote in our elections, the town staff does not in any way regard our seasonal residents as second-class citizens. And we try to be as responsive to you guys as the folks that we see year-round. So with that said, if there's anything that you'd like to follow up with me about, you're welcome to contact me. All my contact information is on the website, or pop by the town office. I'm always happy to visit with you from a 6-foot distance for the time being. So we do really appreciate your engaging with us tonight in this way, and we're here to serve you. So with that said, good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony, for not
You're welcome,
ignoring me.